So when it comes to repairing a relationship, a lot of the questions that I get start with, how do I do XYZ? How do I get my partner to see my changes? How do I get my partner to trust me again? As an example. The problem is that a lot of relationship repair is actually not what you do, it's about the things that you don't do. So in this video, I want to break down the biggest mistakes that people make when trying to repair a relationship and what you can do to avoid them. I can totally understand the panic feeling of a breakup happening or a partner saying that they feel unsure or they need some space to think. I can understand the feeling of panic in this moment. And I can understand why people suddenly start to Google, how do I get my partner to come back to me? How do I get my ex back, etc. Unfortunately, the reality is that when you Google stuff like that, you're going to get a lot of advice that is very short-term focused. And this advice can feel like it's useful. In fact, it can actually be sometimes useful in the short term. But in the long term, it actually causes a lot more problems. So I want to break down some of this advice and some of these gut reactions that we can fall into when trying to repair a relationship. I want to break down why it's so important to not perform these actions if you want to repair your relationship long term. So the very first thing that most people do is love bomb. Now, I know that this term can cover quite a lot of things, and a lot of people don't realize that they are love bombing, but ultimately, love bombing, especially when you're trying to repair a relationship, is essentially using grand gestures to bypass the hard work of relationship repair. So this can come in many, many different forms. This can be bombarding your partner with text messages, calling your partner, checking up on your partner all the time, asking them for reassurance, sending them a load of gifts, sending them a long letter or bunch of letters, proclaiming your love for them. Ultimately, the core of love bombing is doing a lot of big grand gestures that unfortunately have the impact of causing a lot of pressure on your partner. The problem with this is that if your relationship is in a difficult spot, is going through challenges, or your partner is wanting space, it can actually be the opposite of what your partner is wanting right now. If they're looking for some breathing room, a bit of headspace to process information, if you are continually a source of that pressure, then it's actually going to push them one further. So if a computer is overloaded, love bombing is a reset button that doesn't actually delete any data in the computer. A lot of people can fall into love bombing because they see their partner drifting away from them, and instead of actually looking at what is important to repair the relationship, they think, I just wasn't kind enough, I just didn't give enough, so now I'll just do it all now. This alone causes a lot of pressure, a lot of cognitive energy for your partner who's already experiencing a lot of cognitive processing. So they're looking for some headspace, and they're not able to have that headspace. This isn't going to solve the relationship problems, it's actually going to make it worse. It's essentially telling your partner that when they try to do something just to clear their head, you don't have the capability of allowing them that sort of headspace. But the next biggest mistake that I see, and this is where a lot of the online advice can come in, is this whole idea of playing hard to get, faking this sort of scarcity. So this usually is artificially creating distance between you and your partner, or you and your ex-partner, to make yourself seem more valuable, or to trigger their fear of loss. This is what a lot of people talk about when it comes to the no contact rule. Now, this isn't always the intent of the no contact rule, but ultimately, if you are creating artificial scarcity, if you are forcefully putting a distance between you and your partner, then this ultimately builds a foundation of insecurity. It doesn't build trust, because you're arbitrarily coming up with some set amount of time, 30 days, 45 days, to keep your partner at a distance. So rather than taking a look at your part of the dynamic and seeing what you can change, how you can grow, you're essentially pushing your partner away and hoping that they just suddenly randomly miss you. Now, again, I'm not going to dig deep into this. I've had a lot of videos on this in the past. But ultimately, faking scarcity can manifest itself in many different ways. Purposefully waiting X amount of time to reply to a text message, or holding off contacting your partner about certain things. If you're doing this, not because you are genuinely busy, but because you are trying to pretend that you are too busy to text or whatever, you're ultimately faking scarcity. You're pretending that you are too busy without actually being too busy, if that makes sense. So this is a very disingenuous way of acting. So if you're purposefully waiting 6 hours to reply to a text message because you want to keep them on their toes or make them wonder whether you've moved on, this is ultimately playing some sort of game in order to try to get them to feel a certain way. But the next mistake that I see people falling into is deflecting this sort of accountability. So when it comes to relationships, if there's been a dynamic that has not worked, so if you see relationships as systems, even as a system that has not been working, if you're not owning your part in the relationship dynamic and blaming all that dynamic on your partner, this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make. And this is one of the hardest things to break down to people, is that ultimately when it comes to relationships, if the dynamic isn't working and you're not actively changing it, then you are ultimately accepting it. So a lot of people blame their partner. They say, my partner acted like this towards me, so that's why I acted negatively towards them. So they said this hurtful thing, so that's why I said the hurtful thing back. And they justified their own actions by pointing to their partner's actions. The truth about relationships is that every dynamic is a co-created loop. If you're not changing your part of the dance, you're effectively choosing and accepting this state. And this is why it's so important to learn the right relationship skills, the right emotional skills, the right tools in order to be able to change the relationship dynamic, in order to be able to lead in the right direction. Now, this can be a big blocker for a lot of people, but if you think about, maybe you've worked in a really terrible workplace. One of the worst workplaces I worked in was a restaurant that I worked in many years ago, and the owners blamed every single member of staff, every problem that the restaurant had. They cultivated this environment where it was like the Hunger Games. Everyone was looking out for themselves. There was no collaboration. It was dog eat dog. The owners constantly blamed the staff for this environment, but they never did anything to actually change it, to actually change the environment, to cultivate a relationship where everyone was actually working together. And it's the same for relationships. If you are not actively working on changing the dynamic, not only that, but doing it in a way that's effective, then you're essentially endorsing. Ultimately, being able to cultivate the three core elements of relationships. When you're cultivating a strong and healthy relationship, once you're focused on that, cultivating that environment and system for you both to be able to thrive, that's where the relationship dynamic changes. And that's where so much of relationship repair happens, is once you start focusing on the environment, that's where both of you don't have to lean on the old behaviors that caused the system to fail in the first place. So if what I'm talking about here sounds a little bit abstract, I dig deeper into it in my relationship bootcamp. This is where all my members start to learn the fundamentals of relationship repair. And if you want to start your journey and join us, then I'll leave a link in the description if you want to grab your spot. So getting away from the blame and onto action and actually focusing on what is in your control and changing the environment, you put so much more of the relationship repair in your own hands. And as a result of that, you start to change the dynamic of the relationship. But another huge mistake that I see people make is weaponizing jealousy. So trying to prove to your partner or your ex-partner that you are in demand, that you are high value, which is some of the terminology that is out there at the moment. This idea of being high value. By proving that you're high value, by surrounding yourself with the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever your relationship is. But proving that you're high value by posting social media posts, by trying to subliminally make your partner or your ex-partner jealous, by focusing on creating these essentially marketing campaigns for a product that your partner does not want to buy into right now. And this is the thing, is that real change doesn't come from marketing. Real change doesn't come from saying the right words or the right scripts. It's about creating the best product. Once you focus on cultivating the best product, you don't have to market yourself. You don't have to try to trigger your partner's jealousy. You're cultivating a product that is in demand rather than trying to fake that you're in demand. Ultimately, your partner is not some sort of prize. This is not some sort of competition. Trying to scare your partner into returning back to the relationship is very different from them choosing to be back in a relationship because they see the new value of the new version of the relationship. They're two very separate things. And this is the difference, is that when you're wanting to cultivate a long-term relationship, you want to cultivate a long-term relationship where your partner chooses to be with you rather than being in the relationship because they're scared of the other options. Ultimately, if you're choosing to do some short-term tricks or tactics to try to get your partner to feel something, then all you're doing is creating a habit for yourself to constantly play games to get your partner to like you, rather than actually cultivating a relationship where your partner can respect you, can see you for who you are, and is choosing to go back to you rather than coming back to you because they're scared or they're jealous or they've been gamified into coming back to you. They're very different things. So again, I want to be clear. I can understand the feelings, the short-term feelings of wanting to just get a partner back quickly. But if you want your partner to come back to you and stay with you, they're very different mindsets. And that's why making deeper changes is going to be really important for cultivating that relationship. I've actually done a deeper dive on this, on understanding the difference between what is short-term versus what is long-term in terms of cultivating a relationship and rebuilding a relationship back for the long term. So I won't dig into it here. I'll leave you with that deeper dive video, and I'll see you.